Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, we have had our share of natural disasters this year. Snow squalls and ice storms, tornadoes, sinkholes, landslides, they can all wreck us. But they sort of pale in comparison to the natural disaster that we experience most. Pittsburgh's #1 most frequent disaster is flooding, and you do not need to live near a body of water to be at risk. Today, we're with someone who studies, get this, disasterology to talk about what's at stake and whether our region and our people are really prepared. It's Wednesday, August 20th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with Ben Reppert, a lecturer for meteorology and emergency management at Penn State University. Ben, what does that mean? What does your title mean?
So I specialize in weather, but I also have, in the last few years, found a bit of a passion for those weather events that go on to create all the chaos and the ones that get so bad that we'd consider them a disaster. But the important part is figuring out why they create disasters and then what we can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, God, I feel like getting a reputation for understanding chaos is maybe one of the coolest things ever. Do you have a sense of how much rain our region has gotten just this year?
Yeah, so through the end of July, so we've through the first 7 complete months of the year, because August stats aren't totally in yet and not totally quality control.
Right.
But through the end of July, the official observing site for the county, which is Pittsburgh Airport, has seen about 25 inches of rain. And to be honest, that's actually on target through this point of the year. It was a much wetter start to the year, and it's kind of tailed off recently in the last several weeks. But at the official observing site, it's been about typical. That being said, there are there are plenty of reliable observers, volunteer observers spread throughout Allegheny County that have reported anywhere from 30 to 40 inches of rain so far this year. And those places correspond to, the thunderstorms have repeatedly found that person or have just hit those areas of the county harder. But while the official site has seen about 25 inches, which is basically average to this point in the year, there are several parts of the county that have gotten hit much harder and have seen almost, 1.5 times to maybe even 2 times the amount of rain you'd expect to this point.
Yeah, my dad lives in the upper part of the county, and I know he's nodding because he is certain he is one of those high hit areas. I mean, I've read about this idea of a pulse storm, which I'm sure that's existed, but I don't think I'd ever heard that term before this year, but it keeps coming up in the news. What is that, and why is it unique to what we're experiencing right now?
Yeah, so, it's funny how as you go through time, all these terms that meteorologists have used for years, it's certain years one gets latched onto by all the TV stations and all the newspapers, and it becomes, everyone's favorite boogeyman.
You don't know until you know,
Right. Well, yeah. And I, this year, I've seen pulse storms coming up. Everyone's getting latched onto this idea of training, suddenly training is a thing in the weather. So pulse storms, that's essentially just a technical term for a storm that bubbles up very quickly, drops a hell of a lot of rain in a short period of time, and then dies. And that time period is on the order of 15, 20 minutes. These things can be short-lived. And in that time period, though, they can drop a lot of rain in one spot, and it can create flooding. Certain times, if you get several storms to form in the same spot, one after the other, that's kind of what we call training, too. Mm-hmm. That's how you can get certain locations to just get absolutely inundated with a lot of rain in a short period of time. Not just you get one of these storms that can drop a ton of rain on one spot, but then another one forms in the same spot and does it again. And then a third one forms in the same spot and does it again. So that's how that can happen, especially in the summer when there's a lot of moisture to work with.
Is there any definable reason as to why it's hitting some parts of our county worse than others? Why, one person's hill gets hit over and over and over again? Is it topography? Is it anything like that? Or is it just bad luck?
So topography can certainly play a role. And we actually refer to hills or mountains as something called high elevation heat sources. And so those can actually be the source of lift. So, right, if you send air up a mountain, it has to rise. And rising air is actually the way that we ultimately generate clouds and then precipitation. So if you find yourself near the topography, there's a good chance that a lot of the first clouds of the day or first storms of the day will form kind of near those hills or those mountain peaks, so to speak. Of course, I came from Colorado, and so mountains in Pennsylvania aren't quite the same.
I know. I'm thinking like quote unquote mountains, right? But like we have like so many valleys. Like it's not necessarily like the big dramatic blue sky ones, but we have like all these dips. You get like all this fog. And I mean, you can watch, especially on a foggy day, like it kind of coming in and out of our slopes and all these trees. It's really pretty. It's kind of eerie, but it's never occurred to me that it could also make flooding way
spooky
worse.
Season's coming.
Right?
Yeah, no, and that topography you just described, that's part of the reason why flooding is such a big risk in Allegheny County, because, the topography in a sense can help generate these storms. And then if it unleashes rain, all that water has to go downhill into the adjacent valleys. And that's when it really starts to become a problem and people start to notice.
Well, let's talk about the flooding piece. I mean, is it getting worse in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County? Like sometimes it feels like it is, but it could be that we're just talking about it more. I'm not sure which is true.
Yeah, so the question, that's one of the most popular questions that we get these days. Is flooding getting worse? And I always describe it as a tangled web of issues, but the short answer is yes, flooding is getting worse. Then is it getting worse because it's raining more? Is it getting worse because more people are in flood-prone areas? And it turns out the answer is both of those things. And, in any given flood event, everyone wants to know, why did this exact event happen to me? And sometimes it's hard. I mean,
you always look for a reason, right? Yeah. When something bad happens to you. Like, and I know sometimes it's just not there.
Yeah, it's human nature. But when it comes to answering the question for any specific flood, it's always hard to say, exactly it's because of how much rain fell with this, or it's because of, exactly where you lived or how that water drained this time around. But flooding is getting worse. And flooding is actually one of the only weather-related hazards that is killing more people today than it used to. And so that also tells us that people, especially people in flood-prone areas, they don't understand their risk. Lightning deaths have been trending down for years and are now down to about 10 per year when they were once 40 to 50. Tornado deaths, same thing, they're trending down. Hurricane deaths, they're trending down. And I think that tells us that we've done a really good job of educating people on the hazards with those, but the flooding deaths are trending up very quickly, which I think also argues that a lot of people don't know what to do with their flood risk, or don't even know that they are under a flood risk.
What constitutes flood risk? Is it something that like comes upon, like, I see flood warnings, for example, but like knowing that a flood warning is in your area when it's like a whole swath of the county, like that doesn't tell me whether it's like my yard in the same way, right? Like from your perspective, like what can you see and be like, you might be in a risky spot?
Yeah. So there's this stigma that I think a lot of people still think that in order to get flooded out, or in order to experience flooding, I need to live near a river or near a creek or near some body of water. Because if I don't live near a body of water, how am I supposed to see flooding? And I think that's actually one of the biggest problems, which leads to folks not understanding that they could see flooding, where in reality, the increases in flooding that we have been seeing are the result of what we call flash floods, which don't need to involve bodies of water at all. It's simply, it rains so hard, so fast somewhere that it overwhelms the drainage systems, or that water just simply doesn't have a place to go. And so it'll fill up streets, and it'll fill up houses, and it'll catch drivers and commuters off guard. And it can lead to a really tough situation very quickly. And so ultimately, we always say, if you can experience rain, you can experience a flood. That's the bare bones. Anyone can experience flooding. Then it just becomes which areas are more prone to flooding than others. And even that's something that most homeowners or business owners just, they don't quite understand. And there are tools out there these days to help all of them understand. And so that's the first big piece here. It's that education piece of helping people understand just how prone to flooding they might be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what are some of those pieces, right? Like, for example, like this season, as we got more and more rain, I have family members that live on like high ground. And I think they were initially so mad that they picked a home on a high piece of ground and they were still getting flooded 2 and 3 times a day, sometimes as they got hit by storms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? Where, how do you know, like, this is a thing that you're going to experience or you won't?
Yeah. So over the past decade or so, there's been a lot of collaborative work between FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Weather Service, social scientists. All these branches have come together and they have put out interactive tools and risk maps. So you can go on to the FEMA website and you can actually pull up maps of the floodplains, and it will show you how often your particular area is expected to flood. And also there's the flood insurance piece here, because if you fall in certain flood zones or floodplains, then it has implications on, are you required to have flood insurance, and so on and so forth. And if you're in a floodplain, that's basically a way of saying that flooding is, you're at a very high risk of flooding. Can't tell you which day or how many times a year, but if you're in a floodplain, it's basically like saying expect to flood, maybe quite frequently. The National Weather Service has also come out with a tool called FIM, F-I-M, stands for Flood Inundation Mapping. And that's basically a way of visually seeing, okay, if this much rain falls here, what is going to flood? How far up will the rivers come? Or if it's a flash flood event, if you put 5 inches of rain in the middle of a city, all this concrete, can't go anywhere, what will flood? And so that's become a really fun, new, and educational tool to be able to let people see, if this much rain falls on my street or in my town, what are the implications of that?
Yeah, I bet. I'm just kind of glancing at these maps. I've never tinkered with these before, beyond like looking at like development maps, right? Like when a new project is coming up, like we've got one on the riverfront now, a proposal for, a thing with a big Ferris wheel. Those flood maps I've seen, but I've never thought to do it for like my own address. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. There's also a national risk index, which is done in coordination with the CDC. That includes the demographics of all locations. That factors in the social vulnerabilities, like, whether you've got elderly population or low income housing or all those other societal elements that come into play. And that will actually highlight on a neighborhood by neighborhood level just how vulnerable particular neighborhoods are to all the weather hazards, including flooding. You can look at that for each weather hazard. And so, like I say, it's not always just the matter of, how much rain falls in a location, it could make the flood worse. There's also the elements of, is that neighborhood infrastructure equipped to handle it? Can all of the residents or none of the residents evacuate if they had to? That's why flooding is such a tangled web, because it's not always just about the rain aspect, but it's also very much about the societal elements. Can people get out of harm's way? So on and so forth.
What can you do if you have a flooding problem? Like, that now after the year that we've had. I imagine like basics, like not storing your valuables like on a low floor of your house or something. But like, are there any services people can look into? Any recommendations that you have for like how to deal with this once you realize like it's going to hit you over and over again?
Yeah, don't store valuable things on the floor in the basement. I mean, that's get it up, get them up high, or at least get them off the floor, because obviously the lower levels are going to flood first. This one always catches people by surprise. And I always think that, people see me doing this, they might think I'm very strange, which I am strange, but I don't want people to know that. Going around, when I'm on my walk home or into work, if I walk past a storm drain along the street that is blocked solid with leaves or sticks or whatever, I clear it. I'll just take my foot and I'll kick the stuff away, because if your storm drain is blocked and you see a ton of rain, where's that water going to go? It's not going to go in the storm drain. It might go into someone's house, or it might flood the car that's parked there. So that's another thing around your house too. Clean out your rain gutters, clean out storm drains. If there's one right out front of your house and you notice that it's blocked, just take 30 seconds and clean it off.
Ben, that's such a public service. I'm
yeah,
so
I mean,
impressed.
I do what I can for the greater good. But
Right?
it's one of those things that the normal person won't even think twice about that. But it's one of those things where it could make the difference between water filling up your street and not. So that's another, very simple, silly sounding thing you can do around your house. Clean out the storm drains, clean out your gutters, make water want to go where it's designed to go, and not into a house or into a car or into a business.
I've also heard anecdotally this year that you can also call your borough council, your municipality, whatever, the public works departments, because there could be like a rain or stormwater block in your neighborhood that they're just not aware of yet.
Right.
And if you call them and say, I'm having flooding, I've never had flooding before, like maybe it's weather, but also maybe there's a problem, and they'll like snake it and check it out for you and make sure that there's not a bigger issue going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's free. Like you don't have to pay for that. You just call your people.
Right. They're not going to tell you no. They might not be able to get out there in 2 minutes necessarily. But yeah, there are people standing by to also help you understand your specific flood risk, right? Local emergency managers even are starting to get, better trained, or they work more closely with local National Weather Service offices to be able to equip people with the knowledge that they seek. So that's another thing too. I mean, if anybody who has any doubt or curiosity about these things, like just how vulnerable am I? Just how many times could I expect this to happen in a given year? There are people who can give you the answer. Sometimes it's just more making people aware that they can get those answers, instead of having to just turn to Facebook or TikTok or Twitter and basically, vent. Yeah. Rage post or whatever, because that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else that you think people could turn to our elected leaders for? Pittsburgh had that really bad storm in the spring, and the city started putting together like a hazard mitigation plan, which I know you were a part of. Gotta say, I'm a little surprised we didn't have anything concrete before. It's not like we are new to the concept of flooding here. But I'm wondering if there's more that like the city could do, or any of our surrounding municipalities, boroughs, townships, like what should be on people's radar?
Yeah, so it's one of those things. I agree with you. I was honestly quite shocked to hear that Pittsburgh was the only city of its size in the country that didn't have one of those plans already in place. Now, the good news is,
I'm glad they started. I'm glad, but
yeah, I mean, there's usually an event that is the motivating thing that does this, and so that spring derecho or thunderstorm complex was the event that I guess officially spurred it. But the good news is Allegheny County has one of those hazard mitigation plans. And so at the county level, there is it's a 499-page document. It's pretty deep. It's if you're bored one night or in a troubled sleep, it's great reading.
Ben, you don't know what I do for free time. Actually, this is right up my alley.
Yeah, there
Thank
you go. So 499 pages, and pages, I looked this up ahead of time. I did my homework. Pages 81 to 129. So that's roughly 50 pages of it. It's all dedicated to flooding. And Allegheny County asked officials in every single municipality in the county, when they were putting this together, to identify those high-risk flood areas. And all communities in the county, they actively participated in this. Breaks down past occurrences, severity of all past flood events. So at the county level, there is this 499-page document that basically, it's proof that the officials in all communities within the county have been thinking about this and have this information to be able to do something about it.
And not just thinking about it, I just pop that into for later reading. They're also updating it right now. Like there's a meeting tonight at 6:30. It's virtual only, where they're just going to be talking about like some of the update process and like mitigation strategies. Sounds like this is very much top of mind for the county, at least.
Yes. And so, it's one of those things where on any given day, can you call up your local elected official and say, hey, this is a big problem, and it feels like you're not really giving it the time of day or the time that it deserves. I would actually say that right now, and probably because there's been a lot of severe weather recently that has affected the region, right now people are actually motivated to, as you mentioned, update these plans, or in the case of the city of Pittsburgh, create one.
Start one.
Yeah.
We're starting it.
Cheer it on. Yep. People are thinking about this. And when I was part of a panel that was discussing the city's plan earlier this year, they did it the right way. They had the mayor there. They had the person in charge of the emergency management department. They had a person from Public Works. They had a person from the water and sewer department there. They had the person in charge of the city tree canopy to start thinking about, getting rid of or trimming the high-risk trees so they can't fall and take down power lines. I mean, they're going about it the right way.
Yeah.
We just need to keep the momentum going and keep everyone thinking about this so that, when the next big thing comes, we're more equipped to handle it and to deal with it and recover from it.
Ben, thank you so much. I'm really glad that you're working with the city to help them think about this.
You're very welcome. And thanks for having me on. Like I say, this is an important conversation to be having, and we'll have it as often as we need to get people to be aware of their risk.
That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Reminder, you can find all of our shows, old and new, on our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm. And we are always recruiting new neighbors. All the details for our membership program are at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. We'll talk to you soon. I always imagine like an episode of West Wing or something, where they're like sitting around and like, they're like wearing the thing that says whatever their disaster role is, or like Parks and Rec. There's been so many like television episodes that have done this before.